Donald Trump has struck Canada where it hurts the most by tariffing some of Canada's top industries. China is also getting hurt by this, which we have to talk about because it's connected to a lot of what is going on. But what did Mark Carney do to try and take on Trump and fight back? He went to Europe to announce deals that are currently not helpful and will antagonize America and the United States. But don't worry, more spending by Canada's government to take on Trump and the tariffs is going to work, all while Canada's sovereign debt problem continues to get way worse and Canadians are paying for it. And the temporary foreign worker problem in both the US and Canada is getting way worse. This is a problem that's been going on in Canada for years. We have an update on what's currently going on, and it's a warning for Americans as well. These are the scams you need to be mindful of, and which brings me to my last video. I don't want to do it. Some people say I gotta do it. I'm gonna do it. I gotta call out Donald Trump. I don't want to. It's at the end of the video. There's a lot to talk about today, so let's get into it.
President Trump meeting today with his cabinet. He's touting economic wins and says America is bringing in trillions from his tariffs. Here's the president last hour.
Factories are booming compared to before I took office. Domestic auto production is going to be it's going to be so thrilling in 2 years when you see the numbers, because they're building plants all over the country. They're all coming in because of tariffs. They don't want to build. They don't want to pay the tariffs. And if they build their plant here, they don't pay the tariffs. And they're pouring into our country.
So he's correct. We're already seeing international automakers, American automakers. A lot of people are choosing to bring their manufacturing down to the US. Canadians are losing jobs at pretty alarming rates, and companies that have made announcements that was going to be billions, totaling tens of billions of dollars in Canada of foreign automaker investments are already pulling back, and Canadians are going to feel this, especially in Ontario, which already is hurting for most of the industries, and most of it was real estate because of immigration that was being used to carry the economy. So these tariffs are hurting Canada a lot, but they're also hurting China. We got this update on a China expert and what's going on with it domestically, and I think this is very important to pay attention to for the reason I'm going to be, pushing back on Trump at the end of the video, because it's pretty concerning, I would say.
China's top trade negotiator will be in Washington this week. Now, we're told this is not a formal negotiating session, and the Chinese official will likely only meet with deputy-level officials. China expert Gordon Chang joins me. Again, Gordon, we're told that this Chinese official did not come at the request of the U.S. Why would he come uninvited?
Well, I think, China certainly has a lot of reasons to want to come to a trade deal with the United States. The problem here, Stuart, is that there's political turmoil in the Communist Party right now. And I'm not so sure that anybody is willing to authorize concessions that would be necessary for a final trade deal with.
Allegedly, there are a few groups trying for power in China right now. As China's been hurt by these tariffs along with Canada, obviously that could lead to more of a political upheaval
with the United States. So we've got this 90-day trade pause, which ends on November 9th. We'll see if that's extended, and it very well may be, because China might not be in that position to make the deal that everybody wants.
You've been on this program before telling us about turmoil within China and the Communist Party. Gordon, it's not been widely reported, has it?
No, it hasn't, because, the Chinese system is extremely opaque. And of course, major news organizations don't want to report on things like this. And that's certainly understandable. Right now, though, there are signs of instability. The rumors are swirling around Beijing. Some of them are quite stunning. And so therefore, I'm a little bit reluctant to talk about them. But the point.
Quick shout out to, I believe, where I heard a lot of the stuff originally about the China turmoil and what was going on. I think it was TLDR News. I don't know if you guys watch their stuff ever.
Is that this is not consistent with stability. And so therefore, probably something going to happen. And one of the things that's important is that the Chinese military seems to have become even more powerful in the Communist Party system. So that has implications that we have yet to figure out. And until there's really some sign, like Xi Jinping not showing up for some important ceremony, then, the news media will not cover it.
That's the thing that I want you guys to remember. The second largest power in China trying to get control right now is military power, okay? When a country's doing well, they're not going to start going to war. But when they want to get the economic engines churning again, that's when they're going to want to, start rattling the sabers and get things going. So if Xi gets overthrown and he gets replaced by military leaders, that's not good. And here's why this is happening. This information is from an article from the Globe and Mail. It was titled "Why Mexico Seems to Keep Winning in the Trump Trade Wars." But what I wanted to discuss is this chart here. It's the annual change of imports from largest U.S. trading partners. And this is a percentage change from June 2024, June 2025. So Canada is down 13.7% in their overall number on what we are shipping to the US, aka the ones we send the most products and services to is America, and we're down 13.7%. And somebody's going to comment, well, we're up with Europe. Not even close to the amount that we've already lost in doing business with the US. And that's at 13.7%. Canada's already feeling it. We're getting smoked. That was with bad underlying fundamentals. Now, here's the other number. China was down 44.5%. Holy smokes, that's bad. So China has almost always operated with, government subsidized businesses just trying to win business. There was altered growth, bad debt, manipulating currencies. We're not going to do a whole China video today, but it's important to know that China's entire economy was basically based around them, how much junk they could get to the US. And so it being down by 45% when there's already a power struggle. This is important, again, for what I need to say, the pushback on Trump, because if domestic turmoil is coming for China, we're going to need to be mindful. But here's what the Canadian News has to say on how serious Trump is taking the negotiations with Canada right now.
Do you think this is high priority for Donald Trump, reaching an agreement with Canada on tariffs?
Not at all. And we see that every day from the president. And also, I think it's becoming...
Do you think it's high priority for Trump? Not at all. Just, okay, frick.
Increasingly clear as we see Canada continue to move on from the United States, particularly with the story you just mentioned about its submarine procurement. You have to think that many of these massive defense companies in the United States are growing increasingly concerned about the potential loss of business from Canada. And I think this is where you're seeing these communications take place between trade ministers, but also the massive lobbying effort that we know many of these companies, at least on the U.S. side, are doing in an attempt to try to sway the White House, but quite frankly, it isn't working.
Okay, not that I'm here to campaign on behalf of the U.S. military-industrial complex. However, if you're in trade negotiations with a country who prides itself in its military technology, its military production, and you need to show a sign of goodwill that you're going to do business with them to try and get a trade deal done while your top production, your top sectors are getting smoked by tariffs, do you think ordering tens of billions of dollars of submarines from that country could help you get a deal, especially because Canada's already moving its jet purchases away from the US. Between the jets and the submarines, so don't get me wrong, we're going to get into the submarines in a second. We're talking tens of billions of dollars. By the time all of this military spend is up, it's hundreds of billions that we could say, look, US, drop your tariffs. We will make these investments with your companies. Again, I'm not worried about US arms manufacturers hitting their quotas and their profits, but this would be a way for Canada to get a trade deal done. But look what Mark Carney decided to do. While we knew this opportunity was on the table, this is what he decides to do. Yeah, this is not telling America to kick rocks at all. Have you liked the video yet? We're trying to get these videos out in front of more people. We are trying to grow the channel. If you like what we talk about here, feel free to subscribe. All the new subscribers, thank you. Welcome. The new channel members, anybody who donated to the channel, thank you. Let's get back to it.
Prime Minister Mark Carney was welcomed to Berlin Tuesday morning by German Chancellor Friedrich Merz. Merz and Carney just got their top jobs earlier this spring. Carney, of course, elected in April, Merz in May. One's a liberal, one's a small C conservative, but they really both campaigned on essentially a similar message.
They're both liberals.
Promising quick action on the economy and strengthening security relationships.
Countries like Germany, Canada, in partnership with the European Union, can provide stability and prosperity for our citizens.
And so, after about an hour and a half or so of meetings, both men emerged to say they've got some deals done. First, Canada and Germany are going to have signed a critical minerals partnership that will see Canadian critical minerals produced and developed for export markets. Second, Canada and Germany say they're going to get serious about finding ways to export Canadian liquefied natural gas to German markets. Details TBD. But the big
Details TBD. That's the part that I wanted to say, okay? Oh, wow, Mark Carney just signed an amazing deal to potentially work with some submarines, which we'll get into in a second. He's going to do critical minerals and he's going to do LNG. Oh, you mean the things that Canadians have been trying to get to Europe and the US and all over the world for the last 20 years that liberals have been shutting down, not allowing production, you know, projects that are going to take a decade, especially when he's like, oh yeah, we're going to definitely work on those approvals, and then we'll send it to the indigenous, and then we'll send it for environmental. Don't get me wrong. The idea of diversifying partnerships with Europe is a good thing, but you have industries right now getting smoked because you won't get a deal done with the US. Why are you chasing deals that are a decade away? Some of these projects on the TBD that they've announced, it's going to take a minimum of 5 years to just get a port built, not even get the supply built. I think it's going to take a lot longer than 5 years anyways, but don't worry, steel, lumber, autos, you know, all of the manufacturing in Canada, you can hang on for 5 years. We don't care about you.
Commercial and defense news of the day was all about submarines. The Royal Canadian Navy is in the market right now for 12 new subs. And Canada announced today that it has narrowed down the potential bidders or suppliers for those subs to 2 companies. One in South Korea, a Hanwha Ocean company, and the other a German-Norwegian consortium headed up by ThyssenKrupp Marine Systems. Canada is not buying nuclear submarines, but both the German-Norwegian consortium and the Koreans, they can build the type of submarine that can still stay submerged underwater for 21 days. You got to have that if you're going to operate under Arctic ice using a...
That's another thing about the Arctic ice in these submarines. It's so funny. One, Canada, as of right now, essentially has 0 submarines. I just found that out. It's so funny. We have 4. They were built in 1998. They were bought like secondhand at the time. So funny. And the reason we're getting it is because of the Russians, not because of China, who's now got all of these, you know, rumors swirling there. We're getting it to take on the Russians, the ones who are distracted with Ukraine, but Canada's worried about them.
A combination of diesel and battery power. Canada's also asking both these manufacturers, you got to make sure you build these subs so that they can fire ballistic missiles. Now, Canada right now has...
Ballistic missile was my high school nickname.
Just 4 submarines, all of them bought from the British, used back in 1998. And those subs are going to have to be decommissioned in 2035, and that's a relatively narrow window in defense procurement terms. So Canada needs to pull the trigger quickly to choose between the Germans or the South Koreans for these subs. Now, one of the conditions of the contract Canada will sign is this. This is going to be one of the biggest procurement projects ever in Canadian military history. It could be $25 billion. And whatever Canada spends, Canada will require the winning bidder to invest back into Canada.
Oh, can you think of any other country that's basically looking for that level of reciprocal trade? Perhaps the United States. Perhaps the United States is saying, hey, let's do trade-off in business. Let's get deals done. We're doing that with Germany a decade out. We need deals with America now. It's the same thing when they tell you, hey, if you're going to start job hunting, don't quit your job before you have the next job lined up. You don't know how long it's going to take. That's what's happening right now. Somehow, these global bankers can't figure it out, and they're coming up with ideas that we had a decade ago. Mr. Hodgson said one of Canada's greatest opportunities lies in natural gas, especially amid geopolitical tensions with the Ukraine war. In June, Canada dispatched its first shipment of liquefied natural gas from new LNG Canada export terminal in British Columbia. Oh, liquid natural gas, the same thing the Liberal government has been limiting production of because there's no business case for it with Europe when Europe was begging for this for years. And I'm saying every project that Canada is building now that's being approved should be put towards the sovereign wealth fund that Canada could use, especially if we're going to keep handing out money and become the welfare state of the entire world. Germany is Canada's largest European trading partner, with trades in goods alone reaching $30.5 billion last year. That is a lot of sauerkraut, let me tell you that. As Germany attempts to reduce its reliance on Russia's energy and China's critical minerals, Canada could step in. We jumped out of a plane without a parachute because we're cutting deals off with the frickin' Americans before we even got anything done with the Europeans. These guys are nuts. And it's funny because Carney had this meeting just today. PM Carney announces extension of Canada's NATO mission in Latvia. So we're keeping the troops out there, possibly sending more. And in this meeting, after he just announced we're signing this deal with Germany, we're doing all this stuff, he already started to backtrack with soft language. Oh, we're going to have to go through all the approvals and the permits. The Montreal port might be the first project. We might work on other stuff. Like, this, so non-committal. It's all fake announcements. All of it is nothing. He just keeps saying, US, we don't need you. We're going to work with the Europeans, because Canada is the most European, non-European nation. Unless you talk about the actual people of Canada, not European at all. We keep getting told by the Liberal government we always had 1 billion Indians in Canada. But anyways, when we talk about the solutions, we keep getting more announcements like this. Oh, why don't we get a trade deal done? No, why don't we spend more money?
In Hamilton this morning, the federal government announced eligible businesses can now start applying for funding as they face trade challenges.
Ottawa says the Regional Tariff Response Initiative is intended to respond and compete amid these shifting market conditions.
This is a 3-year program. It's a $450 million national initiative that will support businesses and organizations to help businesses grow, adapt, and lead in the changing economy.
So the funny thing is, obviously I want there to be investment in Canadian businesses. I want Canadian businesses to thrive. However, one of the complaints from the Americans is Canadians don't act in good faith. There's government subsidies. There's all sorts of things for them to allow things to get to the market cheaper. So now we announce corporate welfare, which will allow these companies to stay alive, which were going to get hurt by the American tariffs. And guess who's paying the bill for this? Servicing Canada's ballooning debt now costs $2,000 per citizen per year. So when you are paying tax in Canada, $2,000 of that just goes towards sovereign debt, and we have seen where that money has been going. And keep in mind, that's not paying down the debt, that's just the interest servicing costs. So just for us to pay the interest on our government borrowing for insane projects, including paying for asylum scams, all of these people keep bringing over. I'm going to say it in every single video because this is Canada's biggest problem, which I'm going to get into, and this leads me to the next thing. We need to stop immigration. We don't need to slow it. We don't need to focus on bringing over the best people. It needs to stop today until we can get rid of the people who shouldn't be here now, or else it's going to continue to lead like these problems I'm about to get into. Here's a video from the millennial moron. I talk to him sometimes online. We don't always get along on everything. He's a lot more left-leaning than I am. This video does a great job, which, I call the conservatives out all the time, but a great job of actually showing the conservatives were supporting the students and the temporary foreign workers, and they weren't against this. And I said it. I said Pierre did not call out temporary foreign workers and did not call out students until after the Liberals. Here we have proof of it.
If you're hiring for a job without highly specialized skills and there's high local unemployment, you can't logically claim that there's a labor shortage for that position. It doesn't make any sense to lift that rule. But you know who did support lifting it at the time? The Conservative Party. In committee, Conservative MP Stephanie Cousy specifically said that the changes that the Liberals had made, including removing the 6% rule, increasing the time that labour market impact assessments were valid for, and lifting seasonal caps on workers, were commendable moves and that they supported them. The thing the Liberals needed to work harder on, she said, was speeding up approvals and clearing the backlog to get more people into the country faster to address the labour shortage.
Pierre said that all the time. I constantly called out the Conservatives when they said, well, we just got to make sure we get everybody working faster. Getting more immigrants in? No.
Also in the Hub interview, Poilievre went on to criticize the way that the international student program became basically a backdoor work permit for people enrolled in college programs.
The international student program, they were letting people in who clearly were not studying. They weren't even, if they were going to an educational place at all, it was for a few hours a week. Yes. No evidence that they were studying. And they're working 40, 80 hours a week. How could that be a good idea?
All of those people are still in the country, and you now have admitted, Pierre, that those people are here. They came here through fraudulent means. That means they should be deported.
The Liberals were eliminating the cap on off-campus work hours for international students, supposedly to help address the labor shortage, even though unemployment had already been rising for months at that point. Poilievre's immigration critic, Jasraj Singh Halan, said that
Jasraj Singh Halan. What a surprise. One of the brothers Singh wants to bring over more Indians.
But the Conservatives have been calling for this move to be made earlier that same year and described it as common sense. He went on to say, today's announcement by no means will solve Canada's labour shortage crisis. The government needs to clear the Liberal-made backlog, let newcomers contribute to Canada's economy, and get the affordability crisis under control. In other words, a good move, but you need to get immigration going faster. This isn't recent either, it's been going on for decades. The shift to supporting a reduction in immigration from both parties only happened after public sentiment change, and in fact, both parties shifted their messaging on the same day. January 22nd, 2024, when the Liberals announced that they were bringing in caps on student visas. Poilievre was asked if he would put a cap on international students if he became Prime Minister, and he gave a very straightforward yes, as though it was the most obvious thing in the world. But just 10 days earlier, he declined to answer the same question.
100%, that's the point I wanted to get across. This is actually good news for conservatives. This isn't a bad thing. This isn't me piling in on the conservatives. What I'm saying is our sentiment matters. This is both in the US and Canada. Public sentiment matters to politicians. When they see, rut-row, we've got to listen to these people or else I'm never getting in. Now more than ever, it's important because we keep seeing things like this. A 16-year-old in Toronto is begging for work, not for pocket money, but to keep their family afloat. They've applied everywhere. McDonald's, Tim Hortons, Costco, Dollarama, rejected at every door. If teenagers can't even land a dishwashing job, what happens when the real wave of desperation hits? And look what this person's saying. I really need a job. I've applied all over Toronto. I really need some money. There's a situation going on and I really need to support my family and myself. This job market sucks. I've done everything. Went to the local McDonald's, blah, blah, blah. So he explains that he's going everywhere. He can't even get sat down for an interview. And yet, with all of that going on, we somehow have the LMIA postings. And for the Americans, this is similar to an H-1B visa program, basically saying we were not able to hire a local person who could do this job, so we need to recruit internationally. Well, let's take a look at some of these jobs here. I did a video on this again forever ago, but let's look at some of this money that they're offering for some of these roles. And you're telling me you can't find a Canadian, a transportation coordinator for $35 an hour? You can't find a Canadian, a records manager in business services for $43 an hour, and there's no Canadian who will do that for $43 an hour. Some of them make sense that it might be tougher to get Canadians. Like, you got general laborer at a farm for literally minimum wage. So yeah, that one might be harder. But then do you know what you do? We don't bring over foreign people. You offer more money. That's what has to happen. I know people working on farms making a lot more than $17.23 an hour. If you want good labor, you have to pay for it. And here we have a patient care coordinator, Walker's Line Dental Center in Burlington, Ontario. $36 an hour in an extremely populated, dense area. You can't find one Canadian who's willing to do that job for almost $80,000 a year. Okay. And some of the numbers get pretty insane. A construction manager for Casey Development for $67.31 an hour. That's over $140,000 a year, not including travel, not including overtime, nothing. $140,000. And you're telling me that this company can't find local Canadians for $140,000? You think some random Indian who has no idea about local codes, regulations, and all of that stuff is going to do a better job than a Canadian? Find somebody with some level of promise and train them to do it. But the fact is, I'm not saying that company specifically, but probably most of these companies are fraudulent claims where they post fake numbers and they say, look, we can't even get a Canadian in here at 150 grand. But when we bring the Indian over, we are only going to pay him 65. And for anybody who's curious, I'm going to post the website link down below. But all of this temporary foreign worker stuff, all of the China stuff, all of the tariff stuff leads me to this video from Donald Trump. You guys know we're big Trump guys on the channel. I'm Mount Up Patriots. I got a Trump mug. But this is the same problem Canada had. I think it's the broken logic that Canadians use. I called it out in Canada in a ton of videos. I'd be a hypocrite if I didn't call Trump out for it.
Look, we're getting along very well with China. And I'm getting along very well with President Xi. I think it's very insulting to say students can't come here because they'll go out, they'll start building schools, and they'll be able to survive it. But I like that their students come here. I like that other countries' students come here. And you know what would happen if they didn't? Our college system would go to hell very quickly. You'd have, and it wouldn't be the top colleges. It would be colleges that struggle on the bottom. And you take out 300,000 or 600,000 students out of the system. I like having, and I told this to President Xi, that
the same feedback that I'm going to give for Canada and their colleges program. If you can only run through international students, it's not a viable business model. Also, Harvard, Yale, all of the top schools which he's talking about, surviving, it's because they have multi-billion-dollar endowments worth hundreds of billions of dollars when you combine all the schools. Maybe they can subsidize some of the entry-level colleges. But we now know China is in political turmoil and the army might be taking over the government. Is now the time you want 600,000 more young Chinese people coming to America? Probably not. So in the same way that I called out Canada for this, we just brought over billions of Indians. Like I said, if the only way to keep the business alive is billions of foreigners, it's not a viable business model. world. The university and college systems are going to have to change. Speaking of change, Mark Carney, please change your actions. Get a deal done with the US. But if you made it this far in the video, you absolutely rock. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We are trying to get these videos out in front of more people. We're trying to grow the channel. If you want to support, the link is down below. You can do it through YouTube as well. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.